Okay, so he said he's ready whenever we are, and I clicked start recording when he did that. So we're
All
now
right,
left
you can
unattended.
start.
I'd already had. I was letting everybody know we were unattended on the internet for a second, Spence. But we are live now, but you left us
Oh,
unattended for a moment.
oh,
That was
sorry about
dangerous.
that. Well,
It
hi.
was.
Well, sorry about
Team
that.
bonus
Hi.
action is not responsible for what we
Well,
do when the
sorry about
players and talkers are left unattended.
Right. So, hi everybody. Then my name is Ninja Spence 21, otherwise known as Spencer, Spencer Zanya. Other various characters, and in that tonight we have a very special late night bonus bonus roundtable. Who do I have with me on the panel tonight?
You got Hewitt. I'm here.
Okay.
And Nasa.
Knox is here as well.
Alrighty then. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a somewhat of a sad topic in a sense that we are going to basically describe about how to handle player deaths at the table, and it also loop into the fact of having to basically have just a player leave the group. And we all love our tabletop and stuff like that, but sometimes but sometimes real life happens. So let's just basically start with just the obvious question for all of the DMs here. Have you ever can you basically describe the first time you ever had to kill a player? If
Never
you
done
can
it yet.
remember.
Haven't done it yet. It come close, and that was to teach a lesson. Uh, when the DM tells you, "Hey," when the DM tells you, "Hey, this isn't the bullshit games that you used to play when you were 12, where you just run up and kill everybody in the town, kill the innkeeper and steal everything in the shop. This is a world with consequences." And he doesn't seem to get the picture. You kind of gotta show him that there's consequences. So he made the wrong remark to the wrong person, and six dudes jumped him and beat him to one death saving throw left before it got called up. Before it got called off, and he wasn't happy, but he learned a lesson. Aside from that, just in general, I haven't had it happen yet, personally.
I've had a couple. I mean, the first precursor with that would be like with Into the Woods. Everybody knew there was a good chance that their character was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So in that game, a character dying wouldn't have had the impact, especially if it was also like a 4-shot, wouldn't have had the impact as a regular long running game. So the first time I killed a player was playing second edition Exalted. And so this is years ago. I was still in college, so we're looking almost 20 years ago. Oh, fuck, I can say that now. Wow. Let me turn to dust for a second. Anyway, yep, I got some lotion. I'm better. No, what it was is that one went as you think stereotypically with a game that a player died. And the thing is with Exalted, you are playing demigods. You are playing individuals that unleash up to 30 points of damage in a system that usually has 7 HP in a second. Like, second edition D&D's combat took forever. But if you were to watch it actually enacted, it is a Dragon Ball Z fight. It happens so fast that nobody even really notices. And this player had been the big badass the entire time, and then he got dropped. He mouthed off to a high fae in its own domain, demanded service and retribution from it, And then when it laughed at him and said, "You have no right to order me around. I don't even have a contract with your previous incarnation. You are literally walking into my house and demanding shit." And it was meant to be a boss fight that took the whole party of 5. He decided, I will single-handedly one-on-one combat this guy. And as the DM, I'm like, "Are you sure?" And then he got his ass handed to him by a creature that was literally 2 steps away from a god. Now, he got resurrected by the rest of the group, but that nearly ended a friendship because he pitched such a fit, and I tried to talk to him about it. But that's like my ugly story with death, the first one like that. And eventually that friendship did end because he didn't learn anything in the game, and then when bad things happen, because actions have consequences, he took it as a personal attack, and that led to that friendship ending. Which is kind of sad, I guess, but it turns out he was kind of also a douche canoe. But yeah, it was
Funny
more or
how that
less,
happens.
it was more of a it I was still early in my DMing with that, so I wasn't fully ready. But it helped set the stage for me to deal with it later. So I guess that's my answer to the first question. I won't keep hogging time because something I might say might be connected to a later one.
Nisa.
So I have only been DMing for a year now, a year this month. And the I have my kill count is currently at, I believe, 4 player characters. However, 3 of them were a Adventurers League, should have been 3-shot, ended up just kind of being a 1-shot because it was a lot more deadly than we expected. But you live and you learn. So it wasn't that like emotionally invested because they were characters that had been only created just for this, shorter form thing. The only player character death that I feel is relevant to tonight's discussion actually just happened a couple of weeks ago. Had a player who was moving out of state. There's a possibility that she might be able to return by the end game of the whole campaign. But in the event that she can't, um, she decided that it was story beat wise and character arc wise, it was time for her original character, the one that she started that campaign with, a level 8 warlock rogue sorcerer multiclass named Maliara to pass on. And so had a very large OP'd boss fight that was essentially constructed so that no matter how it went down, there was a couple of different ways I could ensure her character went down and didn't get back up. And it went off exactly as planned, and Molly died. So, yeah.
Interesting. I mean, that I do recall that the first time that I basically had to basically kill a character, that it was not exactly by my choice. It was a player. He had like messaged me about like he wasn't really feeling this that he was playing that this old man human cleric turned warlock. He was now that he was basically a light cleric so he basically could not get what he wanted out of this character. So I basically had his character get assassinated, and he didn't even like resist those death saves or anything. And granted that this was me as a fresh DM, that it was basically we were still basically, like having just a good time of being friends and stuff like that. because that he was actually one of the only players that who was actually still cool with me after now that after my first ever campaign had kind of like derailed itself and went all of that. But that's just time for like another time. That's interesting that all of us have that we have all at least had that the taste of blood at least once. At least so basically next question is, as a DM, do you let your player describe their death scene to provide more storytelling ambience?
Uh, so far, no. Mostly because let's see, Cannon's been killed once, and then unfortunately, my wife, who has played in the most D&D games I've ever run, has like by law of averages, has the most character deaths. Because Emily has the Will Wheaton curse most of the time with dice. So like, and in both like the first player character death for Emily and Cannon's death in the game that occurred before we started streaming, they both got disintegrated. So more or less, they went to zero, and I say you kind of poof.
Yeah, it's gonna the scene is gonna be highly dictated upon what happens in the scene. You know what I mean?
Like if they had been run through, I would have like parting words, last words, anything like that. I would allow them, but it's kind of one of those of like you got hit by like a phaser beam that turned you in the dust. So yeah,
Yeah, Molly's death was very similar. How it actually ended up happening was the um like acolyte cultists that were um providing most of the like meat grinder fodder ended up both throwing their there were two or three of them that threw their AoE effects right on top of her. These are some of the Auric blood mages, y'all that have been playing in my Tears of Kairos, you remember them, their bloodburst effects. And so it was basically the first one to hit her took her down. The next two, basically she would auto fail those saves and just have to eat all of that damage. Um, so yeah, I basically, because it's a like a spheroid effect of blood and shadow just exploding in that space. I basically said when the smoke clears, Molly is on the ground, pale, even under her tan skin, kind of thing. And just had to leave it at that. Anything else wasn't gonna. Anything else would have been far more traumatic for the table, and this was supposed to be just a letting this character go, not a tear him to pieces and watch him cry situation.
I mean with Into the Woods, I didn't really allow y'all to describe a death scene because I described it to try to amp up the horror. Like y'all watch as Preacher gets mauled and mangled by a hag, and she just starts gashing him apart. And then when Jolan died, getting stabbed by a bunch of rescued orphans, I just wanted to describe the scene of basically trolls. I just wanted to describe the scene. I just wanted to describe the scene of pretty much Trolls 2 when it's just like a bunch of small creatures over something and just an explosion of almost a comical level of explosion of gore out of what was once a character. And then that went so far south right after that event happened. That was really the defining event for the end of the campaign.
Yes, it was. Yes, it
Right.
was.
I mean that having being killed by you about 4 times now, because I know with Jolan, then Desiree slash Rose, because God, Sybil killed Desiree, and so did Idol now, so that they both are accomplices to her death. But anyway, then that also leads me to like for my own for just my own personal standpoint about it, whenever that basically that sad character basically had died, I just let it just like fade to black because that he already had his new character ready to go and all of that. So I was just like, that the party chose not to follow him or nothing. And then that he just said, just like, forget both of these gods that I am worshiping, that I don't need any of this. So that those assassins of that the warlock patron got angry and just then that they just offed them. But I do think that for like a defining moment, I do think that those death scenes, such as like, what would you say as that you kind of saw that slow motion phase of like that the disintegrate ray coming up in front of your eyes? You can only get like 3 to 2 words out, and then just leave it at that to kind of give it just that more storytelling vibe. But very good points. And then that leads us to our next question. Like, does that have you ever let a character that is dead become a DM minion? Or else that or else that have like any of you have basically been like a DM's minion, especially that if it was at the end of the game or so.
Um, with Into the Woods, I had you and Kyle
Mm-hmm.
say some things. Um, for my Tuesday night game that doesn't stream, the answer to that is yes, but I'm not going to say anymore in case any of the players are actually listening. There's going to be a former player character that does return. I've already got the okay from that player. Um, but one of the best ones I have is not even mine. Everybody met John at the last Extra Life, right? Uh, played in our first game and then also played Nilvac the Magnificent.
Yes.
So when Emily and I got into live gaming again, before COVID hit, we started going up to the game shop when it was Second Home Gaming out in West Monroe. And John was running games and getting paid in store credit. So I wish I could pull that gig, but he he was running Dragon Heist, and the first game Emily and I played in, Emily's character Mal, the bugbear assassin, died, got intellect devoured, and then he talked to Emily, and there was either the option of hand over your character and make a new one, or I'm going to pass you notes throughout the whole time because you are now no longer Mal. You are Mal being piloted by an intellect devourer. And we played probably another 2 months to get through the campaign. And that was revealed in the last session. And Emily got to kill one of the kind of cruddy guys that kept showing up to play. Like the stereotypical old school D&D nerd that like makes other people not want to play with them. Like I'm going to make Geralt and then I'm going to hit on every dwarf because they're just the right height. And like saying that openly to the whole party, it's like, we now think you're a douchebag.
I like those guys. Those guys are fun
Why is that?
because because when you turn it on them, especially with the reprehensible reprobates and gaggle of chuckle fucks that I game with, um, I that we will turn the ridiculous up and we will piss him off, and we will do things. Dude, I know Kyle. I mean, I know Moose. I know y'all haven't met Daryl. Daryl is worse. Daryl actively chooses to use his powers for good, but we will randomly just wake up and choose violence. And when that happens, the chicanery is afoot. Um, those kind of people are really really fun to piss off.
But I guess to reel us back into the question there, because I'm sorry I derailed a little, Spence, is
Oh,
John did
no, that
John
is fine.
John did a wonderful job getting a player to more or less be a long-running encounter for everybody, making things more difficult at certain spots. Betraying the party once we found the treasure hoard. It was awesome because the rest of the table didn't see it coming. And the only hint I had is like, I'm pretty sure Mal's dead because I saw that damage roll and we were level 3. And we were already hurt. So that was a wonderful use of watching a DM use a player or having a player still be a player, but technically still be an element of the DM's, I guess, toolkit.
Anyone else?
I have a player in my newer shop game who her character is a fighter who has since well she initially found a sword of vengeance and she was like, "Ooh, this is cool." And then they ended up falling in on getting offered some goodies from Asmodeus himself, and he basically boosted her sword. So it's all starting to come together. It's been a couple of weeks in the making, month in the making. Um, but I don't know if it'll ever get to the point where she actually dies and I get to use like the character that way. Um, but she's definitely become an agent of doom in the party, turning on them because the sword is essentially taking her over. Um, it's definitely giving me ideas though, thinking about if she dies, what do I do with her now? So that'll be fun.
All right, and you, Knox?
Uh, that's gonna highly that for me. That's going to highly depend upon the character that dies. Honestly, if it makes sense for what's going on and their current situation and their honestly their current adversary, uh, if it makes sense for that guy to do that, then yeah, it will absolutely a, a dead PC or a left PC will very much easily turn into another adversary or another hill that they have to climb. I mean, yeah, I mean, I have every character sheet for pretty much everyone because everyone plays in my house. I have a dresser that is full of all the binders for pretty much everybody that plays in my game. So I have access to pretty much every character that's ever sat down, every character that's ever sat down at my table. So it is not without the realm of possibility that somebody is going to have to deal with with their asshole previous character with all of the really nifty stuff that I've given them over time. That being kind of the sort of Damocles and not knowing what's going to happen next is something that I really enjoy. Um, I I have y'all character sheets from last year. Um, y'all they have. I know at least one of my characters has been in contact with Hewitt's character Sog a couple of times, much to Crux's chagrin because he's confused at
Sog is
times.
not always helpful.
No, no, very seldomly helpful, but it is entertaining to say the least. So I have I have spots in all of my games for all of my characters. All of my characters are end up being can end up being NPCs just sprinkled throughout the world,
And if they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. Um, I'm the kind of person that it's kind of for me, it's kind of understood. And I think my players know that you sit down at my game, then you are part of then your character is not part of the world. If your character is part of the world, your character is a part of the world. Like you are, it is there, period, whether you are or not. So I plan on the world that I'm building. I plan on living and running in forever. I don't plan on starting something else. I don't plan on starting a new homebrew world. It's a pain. Starting a homebrew world is a pain in the ass. I don't want to do it again, so I'm not gonna.
Mm-hmm.
If I decide that I want a different flavor of role playing, then then it'll be on another continent. If I decide that I want to run a cyberpunk game or a steampunk theme game, it's going to be the same world, just in the future. You know, if I want to run low magic, it'll be in the past, kind of thing. So anything that touches my world, I like to I will I will use if the case comes about. I think it's always handy to have really cool things in your pocket like that, especially when people are playing elves and dwarves, things that live 100, 200, 400, 700, 1,000 years. It makes sense that they'd be around. Maybe not being the same. Maybe their interests may not align the same as the current party, but they're still there. So,
Avi the cyber rat.
Yes, exactly. There is no world that exists that Avi does not exist in. Avi started as an NPC.
I mean, then that is a very, very interesting concept, Knox, because I know that while that I have not basically had the chance of being, like like having a player to essentially do like a long con yet, but I have been a DM minion, and then that I know for like at the season finale for like the first Into the Woods, that as soon as that we were like at the whole like creepy tree or whatever, I think that I had upped the creepiness by 12 by just basically doing that voice I did, and then that made the whole table shake, which is good. And then I do think that having just that continuity into your homebrew world of like having that those characters be remembered and stuff, that adds on to that storytelling, and then basically building out actual lore and history. I know for like the shop game that I just finished, it was kind of like 50 years prior to that the events of just my first campaign, Stefan Carcass, that that these players have done things that will possibly pop up in just at this next version of this game and stuff, so then it's going to be a lot of basically notes and stuff back and forth possibly and all of that. But I do want to ask this, now that before we segue up into the second part of this podcast, what if that party mom or dad dies, then what?
I watch the party spend an excessive amount of time and money to try to bring them back. And the whole time, realize I am not necessarily having to create the drama or the difficulty here because it is just everybody trying to figure out how to do it. I mean, I watched my Tuesday night game do that when Emily's character Nasra died because she was party mom. And when that happened, it was pretty much like the brains of the party was gone, and everybody was like, we got to finish this battle. But it's like, okay, we definitely have to bring her back because we don't trust ourselves to be left unattended. And unfortunately, that is the character my wife ends up playing the most in a party.
Anybody else?
I haven't had a. I've had like the crazy aunt. That was like Molly's like role, is she was the crazy drunk aunt half the time. And so, but like it's kind of a stilted like situation because the team, the players all knew that the player was going to be leaving, that Molly's player was not going to be available anymore. So there's not even a thought in their heads to think about resurrecting her, and that's like metagaming that has to be allowed. They recovered her body and they're preparing to like stage a burial for it when they get back to like their home base. They're not just going to leave her in this other plane that they were in. But that's kind of the extent of it. Um, I don't know what would happen. That's something I've honestly never thought about, is if that more parental role was removed. I don't know what I would do. I feel like I would come up with some kind of, I'm not mean. I feel like I would come up with some kind of way, even if they didn't have the fundage or the magical capacity to stage the resurrection themselves. I would find a way for them to find somebody who could, kind of thing. I feel like I would make that happen.
The real fun for me with when they had to resurrect Emily's character Nasra is they had three ways they could do it. They had it in with the Temple of Bahamut, and the second was they had it in with Torm because the two paladins, the beefy boys, as they get called, one tall, one small, um, had ends with their churches where they could have brought her back that way. But the bard had stolen from the host tower in Luskin the headmaster's notepad of legitimizing and had used 4 of the 5 I can do what I want notes on it. So the bard Josh spent 2 weeks actually writing the formal Hewitt, you cannot screw with me, ironclad, this is what I want them to do, and it's going to be signed by the headmaster because it's already stamped at the bottom and he can't argue with it. And I absolutely loved it because they had already had to deal with Faye with me, and they're like, nope, we know that arguing a contract with you this way is bullshit. So I am going to write out everything word step by step. And I'll be honest, I've listened to and learned enough of Terry Pratchett's Discworld that I did something sacrilegious. I turned the host tower into the College of the Unseen, which meant the wizards were all just shy of incompetent. And the headmaster came out wearing a Dallas Cowboys jersey, pajama pants, holding a wizard staff made out of Natty Light cans, with a hat that had a concealed flask in it. And when he saw his own signature, I rolled at triple disadvantage because he was that bad at being a responsible adult. And then he used Wish to bring her back. So, I highly suggest if anybody wants to do something goofy with wizards, read or listen to any of the Discworld where they mention the university, because they all know how to throw fireball, but they are all going to waste 10 minutes arguing what is the best way to throw the fireball and what color a fireball should properly be. It's like the most British thing ever.
I mean, we all know the answer to that question is purple.
Someone's like, "Oh shit, it's just fairy fire." That'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
A little bit. Knox for your if the
You
Was that?
okay then. That did you ever have a party mom or a dad die in your games, and how did your players handle that?
No. Typically, my buddy Daryl is he no, let me see that. Yeah, typically my buddy Daryl is usually ends up being party dad. That's not necessarily a good thing because ultimately every character he plays is also an agent of chaos. So it is.
All right. I mean that for myself that I believe that it just harkens back to like that first time I tried to run Stefan Carcass, that they necessarily didn't, that they did die, but not by my hands. That they had this other guy that he had came in and that I had thought that he wanted to play long term. No, that he was actually there to just sabotage my game because that he was just this crazy old man wizard that that I didn't know any better, and he had a staff of power. So he just basically went to the middle of the battlefield and said, "You know what? I'm nuking everything," and just completely wiped both all of the characters and just left it a battlefield. You know, just kind of like a desolate battlefield. All of their characters died, and then it was just a big fallout on that. But other than like basically the one incident that we will not talk about that has happened this year to me, that I haven't really had a party mom or dad die in a sense. Now, knowing me as a player that is subjugated almost to either being mostly party mom, but Joline for like for just like grave flowers into that the woods. He wasn't really a party dad. He was just like crazy uncle you just don't mess with, pretty much. But he was responsible. So I don't know how that worked.
I just got a text from Knox saying that Discord shit the bed, so
Okay.
he might be and he might not be here in a second.
Oh, okay.
There he goes. He just dropped. He'll be
Okay.
back when he gets it up.
Okay then. Okay then. Thank you for letting me know that. All right then. So should we just keep on going without him?
Yeah, he'll jump back in.
Okay then. Okay then. So that basically leads us to our next topic, which is players leaving a group, and that we all know that IRL gets in the way, you know, but it has to be done. But what? But you know, like, what if that player character was the leader of the group? What would you do in that situation? Or let the players just figure it out?
Well, I've had two situations where I've had people. Uh, well, okay, three. Where people leave the group. There's been multiple games that Graves started out in, and then shortly after, he was no longer in. He dropped. Like he was in and out of Forgotten Sands before we started streaming, and we made it to.
I
You're
have
back.
apparently returned.
Like with his character Belshaffon, we made it to where he was an interplanar traveler. So if he couldn't make repeated games, it's just he wasn't there. He fell through a hole. And then Chris left that game because he got bored, and he left Lost Seas at the very beginning because he just didn't like the vibe. He didn't like the character he made, and he didn't really like the high seas adventure we were doing, plus a couple other things. So I mean, if Zeta or Grave joins and leaves the game, I kind of just shrug because that's just the that he's busy, real life, and other stuff. So I don't worry so much about that or make a big deal about that one. When Josh and Steph left our Tuesday night game, that was a little tough because Steph was secondary party mom. She was a cleric. She was the healer. She was the kind one that bound everybody together pretty good. And then Josh was playing Finn, the artistic magic elf, like magic girl elf bard, doing I think it's School of Creation. And Finn was the face, and Finn was the one who would talk everything through. And I was like, oh God, if with them leaving, the party has just lost all diplomacy. And I am still letting the players figure that out for themselves about who fills in this position, who's doing what here. Because with that party, it makes sense that they're having to work to figure out where everybody's place is now that they've lost two very key members. And they're doing very good at it. They're working really good with each other. Or I should say really well. And it just seems so organic to let them do that themselves instead of forcing something. Just like in another group, I might give them an NPC because they needed the help. But in this one, it very much is. It makes sense to let them figure out those new roles now that the face is not there anymore and the calm one is not there anymore. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. And Nisa?
So I've had, of course, Molly's player left. I had another player who was playing in both of my in-person games at the shop. And in the newer game, he was playing a frontline gnome barbarian of fundamental chaos. And so in the longer running game, he was actually playing a pair of individuals, a changeling hexblade and the hexblade's wife, a Shadarkai artificer. And so in both of those, in both of the campaigns, the player was playing a pretty important either frontline or support role. And when life things happened and he had to back out of not just one but both campaigns, I had to look very, very carefully at the roles and positions that his characters had filled and see what, if anything, I needed to do to fill any of those gaps. And looking at it with as objective an eye as I could, turned out that in the longer running group, even though they were losing technically two of their party members, the Changeling Hexblade and the Shadarkai Artificer, there wasn't a role there that had to be filled again right away. And I knew that there were other people on my waiting list that would be coming in and being able to take some space there. So that wasn't an issue. But then in the newer group, his barbarian was one of only two frontliners in that group, both of them being barbarians. The only other melee fighter that, or let me rephrase that. They actually have 4 melee individuals, a monk, the fighter with the Sword of Vengeance, and 2 barbarians, one a Goliath and one a gnome. And when the gnome left, I could feel that there wasn't, just the way that the party was composed, the monk and the fighter would not be able to pick up as much slack. Just the way that they functioned, it wasn't going to work. They needed one more something to fill that gap. So what ended up happening is had another player who wanted to join that group and essentially came up with an NPC to be bonded with that new character that would fill the role that they were missing. So one of my blood hunters came in to take that spot. And so now that Molly is gone as well, the role that she played, it was pretty essential. I won't say that she was a party leader, but she had a very essential, what's it called, a MacGuffin, a very essential piece that they need in their ongoing adventures. And I basically made it so that that essential component, this compass, was essentially given and auto bonded to another, to like her best friend in the party. And so the Grave Cleric now has it. And so they haven't lost that component. So I feel like when you have players that are leaving, no matter whether they were playing a leading role or whether they were more of a support role, it takes a very analytically critical eye to look at that and say, can they recover from this without my interference, or do they need some kind of deus ex machina? And finding that balance and not waiting too long to deus ex machina something in if they need it, I feel is kind of essential to making sure that a party doesn't fall apart when something like that happens. By all means, give them a chance to recover if they can, but being prepared with something waiting in the wings is not ever going to do you wrong.
Not. And Knox.
I don't know, when most of my games are done pretty ad hoc to begin with. So somebody not being able to play anymore or somebody leaving the game. I mean, I handle that pretty regularly. Here lately, it's been mainly if you're not there, you kind of fade into the background, and what happens. If you show up, then you are no longer part of the wallpaper. You are now part of the party. If you're gone long enough, then I will I will I am not opposed to retconning that you fucked off and did something and went do something else. As long as it keeps the continuity of what is currently happening to the active players for me, rolling, then we'll just kind of roll with it and kind of hand wave it. As far as dependent upon what happens with the party comp, I mean, it's one of the players that's in and out a lot is the cleric in my current game. So that's something that my players themselves are pretty aware of. It's the fact that if the cat's not there, heals are going to be kind of hard to come by. And that's something that I think my players have kind of come to expect. I said it's all agents of chaos anyway. So sit down at the table, see who sits down at the table, assess the situation, and then make decisions based off of party comp. Not not they don't really like kind of pre-plan things on where we're going to go next if they have a lot of information on when they're not currently in a 5-story mansion that's currently underground. But when they're out and about in the world, they'll kind of have some ideas on what they're doing, and they can adjust, and they'll adjust them on the fly depending on who shows up. Because my table rotates a lot. My table, I have 4 people that are consistent, that are here every time, and everyone else just kind of rolls in whenever they feel like, whenever they can, and we just roll with it. It is what it is. It's the way it's. If we're at a point in our lives and situations that if we want to play, this is how we have to play. So we don't sweat it, and we just roll with it. If
Right.
it comes down to, if it's something that I have planned, that, well, they have this person, so this person is going to specifically have to do something in order to progress, or to get out of the puzzle that they're about to be in, or they are the linchpin for the plot hook. Then I'll at that point I'll have to think on my feet and give that linchpin to someone else, or put the party in a position where maybe it takes a little bit longer to get there. Maybe there's another couple of rooms that they got to go through before they get there, just to stretch, just to give them something to do for this session, so that next session maybe they're there. They're not there that second session, then I got to do what I got to do. And whether that is adjust the scenario so that they can succeed, or not adjust the scenario so that they can't succeed, then I will make that assessment, and I will go with that. I'll go with what makes sense and what's going to make for a more interesting story. So I have bad things happening. The bad guy wins. You guys saw what happened with that on for the extra live stream. Sometimes the bad guy wins. It is up to you to decide if this is a hill you're going to die on, or if you are going to run away and fight another day.
Right, right. And then that, I hate to harken back to just that, all good points were made, but then I do hate to harken back to that first botched attempt as me as a DM. Well, I was still learning. Well, then that the players before that fateful night happened, then that sometimes that they couldn't make it, and then I was just like, okay, then that, then that they would have like backups to play and such, and it was just like I had to basically kind of be a little bit firm and like that. If y'all can't really necessarily make it or so, then that your characters are gonna have to go up into the forefront. But I know for just one instance that that the character that who had died, but he had came back as a rogue, that he was actually getting a brand new job out about, I want to say about an hour and a hour and a half away. So it was basically a 3 hour round trip for him to come out, and then he would be making it back at around like 11:30 at night to his house or whatever. And then that was completely understandable for him to like drop out of the game and stuff whenever that all of that mess had happened. But I would say that, I would at least try to basically communicate with just my DM if that something extremely major was coming up, especially if I was that team leader role, that the one that, that the good player that who had always took all of the notes, who had the party funds, etc., etc. I would not. I will always try to have at least that contingency plan available. But I do know that it is a good now that I do know it is getting close to time and stuff. And then I would like to thank everyone on that the panel that who was able to come out tonight. And then if that you have something to plug and stuff, now would be the time before we will let Miro do our announcements.
All right. Monday we will be back with Holy Winds. Thursday we'll be back with Tears of Kairos, and then next Sunday we will have at 8 o'clock our normally scheduled kitchen table. The only thing that's not going to be that for the rest of the month is on the 16th because NASA will be at a convention. We will be running a buddy cop, is what they're calling it, adventure through a portion of the Dungeon of the Mad Mage with Madrid and Preacher from Into the Woods. So that's what we got going on. If you see the Hydra on Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, or Linktree, we are at Team Bonus Action. And on Twitter, we are, let's see, bonus_team. Correct?
Yay!
Correct.
Yeah, all right, I got it this time. And since
He
Knox
did the
is,
thing. He did
yeah,
the thing.
I did the thing. And since Knox is here,
We appreciate y'all hanging out with us tonight, and join us for the next time. We are getting up to shenanigans, and until next time, folks, don't let your meatloaf.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.